My daughter called me in the middle of a rainstorm that tore through Street Louis like the wrath of God himself. Her voice was weak and shaky, barely audible over the howling wind and the drumming of rain against my window. "Mama, I'm so cold," she whispered, and I could hear her teeth chattering. "Help me. Please help my baby." "Where are you, Simone?" I asked, my voice filled with panic, my hands already reaching for my coat and keys. "Tell me where you are right now." "Derek left me at a rest stop," she managed to say, her words coming in gasps. "It hurts so bad, Mama. The baby, he's not crying, he's not moving." And in that instant, a blood-curdling scream tore through the phone line, a sound no mother should ever have to hear from her child, and then nothing but static and silence. The rain was coming down in sheets, as if the heavens were trying to wash away every sin in Missouri. I was sitting in my small kitchen in North Street, Louis, a weak yellow light from the overhead bulb illuminating a pile of freshly washed clothes I'd been folding on the table. My hands had been moving slowly, methodically, folding each piece with the precision that comes from decades of keeping a household together. It was a habit of mine, this need to keep busy, to keep everything in order, a coping mechanism I'd developed over 64 years of life that hadn't always been kind. I was a mother who was used to worrying, used to the anxiety that comes with loving someone more than you love yourself. The drumming of the rain on my roof was so loud it seemed to swallow every other sound in the world. But when my phone rang, when that screen lit up with my daughter's name, I jumped like I'd been struck by lightning. Something in my gut, that mother's intuition people talk about, told me this wasn't a regular call. This was the call I'd been dreading for months. "Simone," I answered immediately, dropping the shirt I'd been folding, my hands trembling as if they could feel through the phone line that something was terribly wrong. "Baby, what's happening? Where are you?" The static was terrible, as if my daughter were calling from the center of the storm itself, from some dark place where phone signals barely reached. Then that faint voice came through, so weak I had to press the phone hard against my ear just to make out the words. "Mama, I'm so cold. Help me save my baby." My heart stopped, actually stopped for what felt like several seconds. Simone's voice, the voice of the daughter I had cradled since she was just a tiny thing wrapped in hospital blankets 28 years ago, was now so weak, so desperate, that I had to fight back the panic rising in my throat like bile. "Where are you, Simone? Tell me exactly where you are," I practically screamed into the phone, but I could only catch a few disconnected words through the interference. "Derek left me," she said, and I heard something that might have been sobbing or might have been the wind, at the bus stop. Highway 40. "It hurts so much, Mama. I can't feel my legs." And then that scream, high-pitched and agonizing, ripped through the phone line like it was tearing the night apart, like it was tearing my soul from my body. After that, total silence. The call had been cut off, either by the storm or by something worse I didn't want to imagine. I stayed frozen for what might have been seconds or might have been minutes, the phone still clutched tightly in my hand, my knuckles white from the pressure. I felt like if I let go of that phone, I'd be letting go of my daughter, losing her to whatever nightmare she was trapped in. I dialed again and again, my fingers fumbling with the numbers even though they should have known them by heart. But all I heard was that cold, mechanical voice of the operator, devoid of any human warmth or understanding. "The number you have dialed is not available. Please try again later." My head was spinning with questions that had no answers. Where exactly was Simone? What did she mean Derek left her? What bus stop on Highway 40? There had to be dozens of them. And the baby, my grandson, what was happening to him? Was he even alive? I forced myself to stop thinking and start acting, the way I'd learned to do during all those hard years raising Simone by myself after her father walked out. I grabbed my old rain slicker from the hook by the door, the one I'd had for 20 years, and snatched the keys to my late husband William's pickup truck. He'd passed away 4 years ago from diabetes complications, leaving me his old Ford with its foggy headlights and windshield wipers that squealed with every swipe. That truck was all I had left of him, and now it might be the only thing that could save our daughter and grandson. I ran out to the small detached garage behind my house, not caring that my shoes were immediately soaked through, or that the rain was beating against my face so hard it felt like tiny needles piercing my skin. I had only one thought in my head, one purpose driving me forward through the storm. I had to find Simone. I had to find my baby and her baby before it was too late. The truck's engine coughed and sputtered when I turned the key, the way it always did on cold, wet nights like this, but finally it caught and roared to life with a sound that felt like a small victory. The truck pushed through the white curtain of rain, its weak headlights struggling to pierce the thick wall of water coming down from the sky. I could barely see 20 feet in front of me, but I drove anyway, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. I headed first to Barnes Jewish Hospital, where Simone had been going for her pregnancy checkups. She was 9 months pregnant, due any day now, and I remembered her mentioning in our last phone call 3 days ago that she had an appointment scheduled for today. "Just a routine checkup, Mama," she'd said, her voice trying to sound casual, but I'd heard the tension underneath. "Derek's going to drive me. Everything's fine." But when I got to the hospital, fighting through traffic that was crawling because of the storm, the receptionist at the maternity ward shook her head when I asked about Simone. She was a young woman, probably not much older than my daughter, and she looked at her computer screen with a frown. "Simone Carter was discharged early this afternoon around 2. Her husband signed her out. Is there a problem?" My heart sank into my stomach like a stone dropping into dark water. Derek had picked her up at 2. It was now almost 8, 0 inches the evening. 6 hours had passed. So why was she calling me at 8 at night, begging for help in the middle of a rainstorm, saying Derek had abandoned her at a bus stop? I couldn't make sense of it. The pieces didn't fit together in any way that made logical sense. I started the truck again and headed towards Simone and Derek's house, a small rental property about 8 miles away on the south side of Street Lewis. It was in a neighborhood that had seen better days, where the houses were old and the streets were cracked, but Simone had been so proud when they'd first moved in there after getting married 2 years ago. "It's our first home together, Mama," she'd said, showing me around the cramped rooms with genuine excitement. "We're going to make it beautiful." But over the past year, that excitement had faded from her voice whenever we talked. She'd become quieter, more withdrawn, making excuses for why she couldn't visit, why she couldn't meet me for coffee like we used to do every Sunday. And whenever I asked about Derek, her answers were vague and evasive. "He's fine, Mama. We're fine. Just busy with work and getting ready for the baby." But a mother knows when her child is lying, even when that child is a grown woman. I'd known something was wrong for months, but Simone kept insisting everything was okay, and I hadn't pushed as hard as I should have. When I reached their house, I pounded on the door with my fists, shouting Simone's name into the storm. "Simone, baby, are you in there? It's Mama." But the house was completely dark, every window black like dead eyes, and no one answered my calls. Only the howl of the wind and the relentless drumming of rain responded to me. I tried the doorknob, but it was locked. I peered through the front window, but couldn't see anything in the darkness inside. The house felt empty, abandoned, like no one had been there for hours. I got back in the truck with a knot in my stomach that was tightening with every passing minute. Highway 40 West, the main route from the hospital back to their neighborhood, popped into my mind as my last clue, my only hope of finding her. I drove along that highway, my eyes straining to see through the rain, stopping at every bus stop I could find. There were more of them than I'd realized, small shelters scattered along the road, most of them poorly lit or not lit at all. At each stop, I would pull over, get out into the rain, and yell her name into the darkness. "Simone, Simone, honey, where are you?" My voice was lost almost immediately, swept away by the wind and rain, swallowed by the storm. No one answered at the first stop, just an empty shelter with trash scattered across the ground. Not a soul at the second stop either, just rain and darkness and my growing desperation. But when I reached the third stop, as the truck's headlights swept across the area, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice in my veins. It was a cream-colored maternity coat, the exact one I had bought for Simone when she was 7 months pregnant, spending money I couldn't really afford because I wanted my daughter to have something nice, something that would keep her and the baby warm. It was lying soaked and crumpled on the muddy ground next to a dented metal lamppost, looking like it had been discarded or dropped in a hurry. Nearby was a shattered cell phone, its screen broken into what looked like 1,000 glittering pieces scattered across the wet pavement, as if someone had smashed it deliberately or it had been thrown down with force. I got out of the truck, my legs shaking so badly I almost fell, almost couldn't make it the few steps to where the coat lay. I picked it up, clutching it tightly against my chest as cold rainwater trickled through my fingers, soaking into my clothes. "Simone," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion I couldn't control anymore. "Baby, where are you?" I walked further into the bus shelter, my eyes adjusting to the dim light from the single flickering bulb overhead. I moved toward a dark corner where the shadows were deepest, where someone might try to hide from the storm or from something worse. And then I saw her, my daughter, my baby girl. Simone was huddled in that corner like a wounded animal, trembling from head to toe, her whole body convulsing with cold and shock. She was clutching a newborn baby against her chest, a tiny infant wrapped in what looked like a thin hospital blanket that was now soaked through. The baby was red and purple, his little face scrunched up, and even from where I stood I could see he wasn't moving, wasn't making any sound. Simone's face was as pale as paper, drained of all color. Her lips had a bluish tint that terrified me, and her eyes were closed like she was barely conscious. Her clothes were soaked with rain, and something else, blood, I realized with horror, dark stains spreading across her dress. "Simone!" I screamed, my voice breaking as I ran to her, splashing through puddles, not caring about anything except reaching my daughter. I knelt down beside her, the icy water immediately soaking through my pants to the bone, but I didn't care about my own discomfort. None of that mattered. I quickly pulled a towel from the emergency bag I always kept in the truck, wrapped it around the baby with trembling hands, and took off my own rain slicker to cover Simone, trying to shield her from the elements that had already done so much damage. "Honey, Mama's here. I'm here now. You're going to be okay," I repeated over and over like a prayer or a promise I desperately hoped I could keep, my tears mixing with the rain running down my face. Simone's eyelids fluttered open for just a moment. She looked at me, but her gaze was unfocused, like she was looking through me rather than at me. "Mama," she whispered, her voice so faint I had to lean in close to hear it. "I tried to hold him. I tried to keep him warm. But I'm so cold. Everything hurts. I know, baby. I know, but I've got you now, both of you. We're going to get help." I somehow managed to lift both of them, Simone leaning heavily against me while I cradled the baby in one arm, and I half carried, half dragged them to the truck. Getting them inside took every ounce of strength I had. Simone could barely support her own weight and kept slipping, and I was terrified of dropping the baby who still hadn't made a single sound. Once they were in the passenger seat, Simone slumped against the door and I positioned the baby in her arms, wrapping both of them in every blanket and towel I had in the truck. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone steady as I dialed 911. "Please," I said when the operator answered, my voice breaking. "Please come quickly. My daughter just gave birth. She's hypothermic. The baby, I don't know if he's breathing." We're at the third bus stop on Highway 40 West, past the King's Highway exit. "Please, hurry, please." The operator was asking me questions, trying to keep me calm, asking about Simone's condition and the baby's condition, but I could barely form coherent sentences. "Just come," I kept saying. "Please just come now." I stayed in the truck holding both of them, trying to share my own body heat, rubbing Simone's arms and back, checking the baby for any signs of life. His little chest was moving, I realized with a flood of relief so intense it made me dizzy. Shallow breaths, barely perceptible, but he was breathing. Simone opened her eyes again and looked at me with such pain and fear that it broke something inside me. "I don't want to die, Mama," she whispered. "I don't want Isaiah to die. Please don't let us die." "You're not going to die," I told her fiercely, holding her face in my hands. "Neither of you is going to die. I won't let that happen." "Do you hear me, Derek?" she said, and her voice was filled with something beyond pain, something like betrayal and despair mixed together. "He left me there, Mama. I was in labor, and he just left me on the side of the road like I was trash, like we were nothing." Before I could respond, before I could process what she was telling me, she fainted, her head falling onto my shoulder, her body going limp. The ambulance arrived after what felt like hours but was probably closer to 12 minutes. 2 paramedics jumped out and ran to the truck, a young black man and an older white woman, both moving with practiced efficiency. They quickly assessed Simone and the baby, asking me rapid-fire questions I tried my best to answer. When did she give birth? How long has she been exposed to the cold? Is she breathing normally? What about the baby? The older paramedic, whose name tag said Jennifer, checked the baby first. "The infant has severe hypothermia and possible respiratory distress. We need to get him warmed up immediately and get oxygen started." The male paramedic, whose tag said Marcus, was examining Simone. "Significant blood loss, signs of shock, body temperature is critically low. We need to move fast." They worked quickly, getting Simone onto a stretcher, wrapping the baby in specialized warming blankets, hooking up IV lines and oxygen masks. I stood there in the rain, feeling helpless and useless, watching these strangers work to save my daughter and grandson. "Ma'am, are you family?" Jennifer asked me as they prepared to load Simone into the ambulance. "I'm her mother," I said. "Can I ride with her?" "Yes, get in. We're going to Barnes Jewish. Are you okay to follow in your vehicle or do you need to come with us?" "I'll follow," I said, knowing the truck needed to get to the hospital anyway. "Just please, save them. Please." They loaded Simone and baby Isaiah into the ambulance and took off with sirens wailing, cutting through the storm. I got back in the truck, my clothes completely soaked, my body shaking from cold and shock and fear, and I followed those flashing red lights through the rain-soaked streets of Street Louis. My mind was racing with Simone's words. Derek left me. He abandoned her while she was in labor, left her and their newborn baby at a bus stop in the middle of a storm to die. What kind of man does that? What kind of monster abandons his wife and child? Rage started to build inside me, hot and fierce, but I pushed it down. There would be time for anger later. Right now, I needed to focus on getting to the hospital, on being there for Simone and Isaiah, on making sure they survived this nightmare. At the hospital, they rushed Simone and Isaiah through the emergency entrance, medical staff swarming around them like they were the only patients in the world. I tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped me. "Ma'am, you need to wait here while they work. Someone will come talk to you as soon as we know more." So I sat in that sterile waiting room, my clothes still soaking wet, creating a small puddle on the floor around my chair. I didn't dare close my eyes. Every time the emergency room doors swung open, I flinched, hoping for news, terrified of what that news might be. Other people came and went, some with minor injuries, some with emergencies of their own, but I barely registered their presence. My entire world had narrowed down to those double doors and what was happening behind them. Hours passed. I don't know how many. Time had lost all meaning. Finally, around 2:00 the morning, a doctor came out to talk to me. He was a middle-aged black man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and he looked tired, but his voice was steady and professional. "Mrs. Carter? I'm Dr. Williams. Are you Simone's mother?" "Yes," I said, standing up so fast I felt dizzy. "How are they? Please tell me they're okay. Your daughter is stable now. She suffered from severe hypothermia, exhaustion, and significant blood loss from giving birth without medical assistance. She also has signs of malnutrition and dehydration that suggest she's been neglected for some time. But she's young and strong. With proper care, she should make a full recovery." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I had to sit back down. "And the baby, Isaiah?" Dr. Williams' expression became more serious. The infant was in critical condition when he arrived. Severe hypothermia, low blood sugar, and he'd aspirated some amniotic fluid. "We've got him in the NICU on warming protocols and respiratory support. The next 48 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. You got to them just in time, Mrs. Carter." Another hour in those conditions, and we'd be having a very different conversation. I buried my face in my hands and wept, all the fear and tension of the past hours finally breaking through. "Can I see them?" I asked when I could speak again. "Simone is sleeping, but you can sit with her. The baby is in intensive care, so visits are restricted, but we can arrange for you to see him through the window." He led me to Simone's room. She was lying in the hospital bed, looking small and fragile against the white sheets, with IV lines in her arms and monitors beeping softly. Her face still had that deathly pale color, but her lips were no longer blue. I pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand. It was warmer now, no longer that terrible ice cold I'd felt at the bus stop. I sat there for hours, just watching her breathe, thanking God or fate or whatever force in the universe had guided me to her in time. As dawn began to break outside the window, Simone's eyes fluttered open. "Mama," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Her eyes filled with tears. "Isaiah, is he alive?" "He's alive. He's in the NICU, but the doctors say he's going to be okay. You both are." She closed her eyes and tears streamed down her cheeks. "I was so scared, Mama. I thought we were going to die there. I thought no one would find us." "Tell me what happened," I said gently. "Tell me why Derek left you there." And slowly, over the next hour, with many pauses when the pain or emotion became too much, Simone told me everything. She told me how Derek had become increasingly controlling over the past year, isolating her from friends and family, criticizing everything she did, making her feel worthless, how he'd started seeing another woman, someone named Bianca, and had stopped hiding it in recent months, bringing her around, flaunting the affair. How that morning, when Simone went into labor, she'd called Derek at work to come take her to the hospital. He'd picked her up, but instead of driving to Barnes Jewish, he'd driven out to Highway 40, pulled over at that bus stop, and told her to get out. "He said I was ruining his life," Simone whispered, her voice breaking. "He said the baby probably wasn't even his, which is insane because I've never been with anyone else. He said he was starting a new life with Bianca, and I wasn't part of it. Then he just drove away, Mama. He left me there in the rain, in labor, and he drove away." Rage, pure and hot, flooded through me. That monster, that absolute monster. "We're calling the police right now." "No," Simone said, grabbing my hand with surprising strength. "Please, Mama. Not yet. I can't deal with that right now. I just need to focus on Isaiah, on getting better. Baby, what he did is attempted murder. He tried to kill you and the baby." "I know," she said, fresh tears falling. "But I'm so tired. I'm so tired of fighting. Can we just wait, please?" I wanted to argue, wanted to call the police that very moment, but looking at my exhausted, traumatized daughter, I realized she needed time to heal before facing the legal battle that would surely come. "Okay," I said. "We'll wait, but not for long. Derek is going to pay for what he did." Over the next 4 days, I barely left the hospital. I slept in the chair next to Simone's bed, ate cafeteria food, wore the same clothes until a nurse took pity on me and brought me some scrubs to change into. Simone slowly regained her strength, and Isaiah, that tiny fighter, improved each day until they moved him out of intensive care. But on the third day, something happened that made it impossible to wait any longer. Derek showed up at the hospital with his mother, Mrs. Evelyn, a woman I'd never liked, who'd always looked down on our family like we weren't good enough for her precious son. They marched up to Simone's room like they owned the place, Derek wearing an expensive suit and carrying flowers, putting on a show for the nurses. I watched Derek and his mother leave, their footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor, and I felt my hands shaking with rage I'd been suppressing. Rebecca stayed with us for another 20 minutes, gathering more details, explaining the legal process ahead, and assuring Simone that she wouldn't have to face Derek alone. After Rebecca left with promises to start working on the restraining order immediately, Simone looked at me with exhaustion written across every feature of her face. "Mama, I'm so tired. I don't know if I have the strength to fight him. He always wins. He always finds a way to make everything my fault." "Not this time," I said firmly, sitting back down beside her bed and taking her hand. "This time we have evidence. We have witnesses. We have the truth on our side. And baby, you're not alone anymore. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Over the next 24 hours, things moved quickly. Rebecca filed for an emergency restraining order, and a judge granted it based on Simone's testimony about the abandonment. Derek was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Simone or the hospital. The hospital social worker, a compassionate woman named Maria Rodriguez, documented Simone's injuries and medical condition, creating an official record that would be crucial for the case. Meanwhile, Isaiah continued to improve. By the fourth day, they moved him from the NICU to the regular nursery, and Simone was finally strong enough to hold him for more than a few minutes at a time. I watched her cradle, that tiny baby, tears streaming down her face, whispering promises to him that she would protect him, that she would never let anyone hurt him. It broke my heart and filled it with pride at the same time. My daughter, who'd been through hell, was already being the mother her son needed. But then came the Facebook post. It appeared on Derek's page on the morning of the 5th day, and a friend from church called to tell me about it because I wasn't on social media. I borrowed a nurse's phone to look at it, and what I saw made me feel physically sick. Derek had posted a long, emotional message with the heading "A Father's Heartbreak." In it, he painted himself as a devoted husband and father who'd been trying desperately to get his mentally unstable wife to go to the hospital when she was in labor, but she'd run away from him in a state of delusion. He claimed he'd been searching for her all night in the storm, worried sick, and had only just found out she was at Barnes Jewish Hospital. He wrote about how grateful he was that Simone and the baby were safe, but how concerned he was about Simone's mental health and her ability to care for their son. He even included a photo of himself holding what looked like baby clothes and toys, the perfect image of a caring father preparing for his child. The post had hundreds of comments, most of them sympathetic to Derek, calling Simone irresponsible, saying she needed psychiatric help, demanding that the baby be taken away from such an unfit mother. I showed the post to Simone and watched the color drain from her already pale face. "He's doing it," she whispered. "He's turning everyone against me. He's making them think I'm crazy." "No one who matters believes that," I said. But even as I spoke, I worried about how this narrative could affect the custody battle. Derek was building a public record of Simone as an unstable mother, and people were believing him because he was convincing, because he knew how to manipulate perception, because abusers are often very, very good at playing the victim. Rebecca arrived an hour later with Valentina Cruz, the private investigator she'd mentioned. Valentina had already started her work, and she had news. "I've been looking into Derek's background and his relationship with Bianca Rios," Valentina said, opening her laptop to show us what she'd found. Bianca works at the same company as Derek, in the accounting department. They've been seeing each other for at least 14 months, based on social media posts that Bianca later deleted, but that I was able to recover from cached pages. She showed us photos of Derek and Bianca at restaurants, at a hotel in Kansas City, at various locations around St. Louis, all while Simone was pregnant. "There's more," Valentina continued. "I interviewed some of Derek's co-workers anonymously. 3 of them confirmed that Derek has been openly talking about leaving Simone for months. One of them, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, said Derek told her 2 weeks ago that he wished Simone would just disappear so he could start fresh with Bianca without the complications of a divorce and child support. That's premeditation," Rebecca said, her eyes lighting up. "That's evidence that he'd been planning to get rid of Simone before the abandonment happened." "There's still more," Valentina said. "I pulled Derek's phone records. He made multiple calls to Bianca on the day Simone went into labor, including one call that lasted 18 minutes right before he picked Simone up from the hospital, and another call immediately after he would have dropped her at the bus stop. I'm working on getting the content of those calls, but the timing is damning." Simone was crying quietly as she listened to all of this. "He really was planning to kill me. It wasn't just an impulse. He planned it." "Yes," Valentina said gently, "and that's what we need to prove in court. But I need your help with something, Simone. This Facebook post Derek made, it's actually going to work in our favor, but only if we can prove it's a fabrication. Do you remember anything specific about that day that contradicts his version of events?" Simone thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. "He said in the post that I ran away from him when he was trying to take me to the hospital, but that's impossible. I was in active labor, having contractions every 3 minutes. I could barely walk. There's no way I could have run anywhere, and the medical records will show how far along I was in labor." "Perfect," Rebecca said. "That's the kind of specific detail that destroys false narratives. What else?" "He said he was searching for me all night," Simone continued, her voice getting stronger. "But if he was really searching, why didn't he call my mother? He has her number. Why didn't he call the police? Why didn't he call the hospitals? There's no record of any of that because he wasn't searching. He knew exactly where I was because he's the one who left me there." Valentina was typing rapidly on her laptop. "I'm going to pull all emergency call records for that night, check with all the hospitals in the area, verify that Derek made no attempts to find you. That's going to be powerful evidence." "What about Mrs. Evelyn?" I asked, Derek's mother. "She was at the hospital with him today, backing up his story." Simone says Mrs. Evelyn knew about the affair with Bianca and encouraged Derek to leave Simone. "Can we prove that?" "I'm working on it," Valentina said. "I've identified several people who've seen Mrs. Evelyn, Derek, and Bianca together in social settings. I'm going to interview them, see if any of them overheard conversations about Derek's plans. Mrs. Evelyn's involvement could make her an accessory to attempted murder." The investigation continued over the next 2 weeks. Simone was discharged from the hospital after a week, and she and Isaiah came home with me to my small house in North St. Louis. I set up the guest bedroom for them, buying a crib and baby supplies with money from my dwindling savings account, but I didn't care about the cost. Having them safe under my roof was worth every penny. Derek tried to visit multiple times, always with his mother in tow, always carrying gifts and wearing that false mask of concern. But the restraining order kept him away, and each attempt he made was documented by police, building our case that he was harassing and intimidating Simone. Meanwhile, Valentina's investigation uncovered more damning evidence. She found text messages between Derek and Bianca discussing how to get rid of Simone, messages that Bianca had tried to delete but that existed on Derek's cloud backup. She found bank records showing Derek had been funneling money from his and Simone's joint account into a secret account he shared with Bianca, preparing for their life together. She even found a lease agreement Derek had signed for an apartment in downtown St. Louis, a place for him and Bianca to live after he dealt with Simone. The most damning evidence came 3 weeks after that terrible night at the bus stop. Valentina managed to track down the owner of a gas station located about 2 miles from where I'd found Simone. The owner, a Pakistani man named Ahmed Hassan, had security cameras that covered not just his property, but also a good portion of the road. When Valentina explained what she was investigating, Mr. Hassan was more than willing to help. He pulled the footage from that night and there it was, clear as day, despite the rain. Derek's silver Honda Accord, pulling into the gas station at 6:47 inches the evening, just over an hour before Simone had called me. The timestamp on the video showed Derek getting out of the car alone, going inside to buy something, then standing under the station's awning for several minutes while making phone calls. He looked calm, relaxed even, not like a man whose wife was in labor and missing. He was smiling while he talked on the phone. Then he got back in his car and drove away, heading west, away from the hospital, away from any help Simone might have gotten. "This proves he left her there and didn't care," Rebecca said when Valentina showed us the footage. "He had time to stop for snacks and phone calls while his wife was giving birth alone in a storm. This is going to destroy his credibility." But Derek wasn't giving up. 2 days after we received the gas station footage, Derek's lawyer filed a motion in family court requesting emergency custody of Isaiah, claiming that Simone was an unfit mother based on her history of mental instability and poor judgment. They submitted a medical certificate supposedly from a psychiatrist named Dr. Robert Morrison stating that Simone showed signs of postpartum psychosis and posed a danger to herself and the baby. When Rebecca showed me that document, I felt my blood pressure spike. "This is fake," I said immediately. "Simone has never seen a psychiatrist. She's never had any mental health issues." Rebecca nodded grimly. "I know, and we're going to prove it's fake. Valentina is already looking into this, Dr. Morrison. It took Valentina less than 48 hours to uncover the truth. Dr. Robert Morrison was indeed a licensed psychiatrist, but he'd never met Simone, never examined her, never written any such certificate. When Valentina contacted him, Dr. Morrison was shocked and angry that his name had been forged on a legal document. He immediately provided a notarized statement saying he'd never treated Simone Carter and that the certificate bearing his name was fraudulent. Further investigation revealed that Derek had paid a man named Marcus Chen, who had access to medical office supplies through his job at a printing company, $3,500 to create the fake certificate. Valentina found the Venmo transaction, found text messages between Derek and Marcus discussing the forgery, found everything we needed to prove that Derek had committed fraud. "This changes everything," Rebecca said, her voice filled with satisfaction. "Derek just committed a felony. Forging medical documents to influence a custody hearing is serious criminal behavior. I'm filing charges immediately, and I'm also going to use this at the custody hearing to show the judge exactly who Derek really is." The custody hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after the night I'd found Simone at the bus stop. During those 6 weeks, my house became command central for building our case. Rebecca and Valentina were there constantly, going over evidence, preparing testimony, anticipating Derek's defense strategies. Simone spent her days caring for Isaiah, who was thriving now, gaining weight and hitting all his developmental milestones, a beautiful, healthy baby who showed no lasting effects from his traumatic entry into the world. I watched my daughter transform during those weeks. The scared, broken woman I'd found huddled in that bus shelter was slowly being replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd found her voice and her courage. She started keeping a detailed journal of everything Derek had done to her over the years, all the abuse she'd minimized or excused, all the red flags she'd ignored because she'd been conditioned to think his behavior was normal or was somehow her fault. The journal became a crucial piece of evidence, documenting a pattern of control, manipulation, and escalating violence that culminated in the abandonment. We also started getting unexpected support from people who'd known Derek and had seen through his facade. A neighbor from the apartment building where Derek and Simone had lived came forward to say she'd witnessed Derek verbally abusing Simone multiple times, calling her degrading names, threatening her in the parking lot. Two of Derek's co-workers contacted Valentina anonymously at first, then agreed to testify about conversations where Derek had talked about getting rid of Simone and starting fresh with Bianca. Even some of Derek's own family members, cousins and an aunt who'd never liked Mrs. Evelyn's influence over Derek, reached out to offer support. But the most significant development came when Bianca Rios contacted Rebecca directly, asking for a meeting. We were all suspicious of this, wondering if it was some kind of trap or ploy orchestrated by Derek, but Rebecca, with her years of experience reading people, decided to hear what Bianca had to say. The meeting took place at Rebecca's office, and I insisted on being there along with Simone, who wanted to face the woman who'd been sleeping with her husband. Bianca arrived looking nothing like the confident, glamorous woman from the social media photos Valentina had recovered. She was thin, her face drawn, her eyes red from crying. She sat down across from us and immediately started talking, words tumbling out like she'd been holding them in for too long. "I didn't know," she said, her voice shaking. "I swear I didn't know what Derek was planning to do. He told me Simone was unstable, that she was making his life hell, that she was trying to trap him with a baby that probably wasn't even his. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because I was in love with him." "You knew he was married," Simone said quietly, her voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "You knew he had a pregnant wife at home and you didn't care." "You're right," Bianca admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I was selfish and cruel, and I told myself it was okay because Derek said he didn't love you anymore, that the marriage was over. I was wrong, but I never imagined he would try to kill you. When I found out what he did, leaving you at that bus stop, I was horrified." "How did you find out?" Rebecca asked, her lawyer instincts engaged, sensing something important. "Derek called me that night," Bianca said. "Right after he left you at the bus stop. He was laughing, Simone. He was actually laughing, telling me that he'd solved all our problems, that you wouldn't be an issue anymore. I asked him what he meant, and he said you were giving birth at a bus stop in the middle of a storm, and by morning you'd probably be dead from exposure or complications. He said it would look like a tragic accident, a mentally unstable woman who wandered away from the hospital and got lost in the storm." The room went silent. Even Rebecca, who'd heard countless horrific stories in her career, looked shaken. Simone's face had gone pale, her hands trembling as she processed the confirmation that Derek had genuinely intended for her to die. "I should have called the police right then," Bianca continued, her voice breaking, "but I was scared. Derek said if I told anyone, he'd say I was the one who planned it, that he'd make sure I went to prison. And his mother, Mrs. Evelyn, she called me the next day and said the same thing. She said Derek was her son and she'd protect him no matter what, and if I caused trouble for him, she'd destroy me." "Mrs. Evelyn knew?" I asked, my voice sharp with rage. "She knew what Derek had done and she helped cover it up?" Bianca nodded miserably. "Mrs. Evelyn has been involved from the beginning. She's the one who encouraged Derek to have an affair in the first place. She never liked Simone, always said she wasn't good enough for Derek, that she was holding him back. Mrs. Evelyn even helped us find the apartment downtown, paid the first month's rent. She told Derek that getting rid of Simone was the smartest business decision he could make, that it was better than a divorce that would cost him money and reputation." Rebecca was taking notes rapidly. "Are you willing to testify to all of this in court? Are you willing to provide evidence of these conversations?" Bianca hesitated, fear evident on her face. "If I do, Derek will come after me. He's already threatening me because I stopped returning his calls. He says I owe him my loyalty, that we're in this together." "You were never in it together," Rebecca said firmly. "Derek was using you, just like he used Simone, just like he uses everyone. He's a manipulator and an abuser." And right now, you have a choice. You can continue to protect him and become an accessory to attempted murder, or you can do the right thing and help us make sure he never hurts anyone again." Bianca looked at Simone for a long moment. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but I am sorry. I'm sorry for my part in your pain. And yes, I'll testify. I'll tell the court everything." She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "I recorded some of our conversations. I started doing it a few weeks ago when Derek was getting more erratic, when I started to realize that maybe I wasn't as special to him as he'd made me believe. I have the call from the night he left you at the bus stop. I have conversations with Mrs. Evelyn. I have text messages he sent me detailing his plans." Rebecca's eyes widened. "You have recordings?" "Bianca, this could be the evidence that puts Derek away for a very long time." Over the next hour, Bianca transferred all her recordings and messages to Rebecca's secure server. "We listened to some of them right there in the office, and with each one, my disgust for Derek and his mother grew." In one recording, Derek laughed about how easy it was to manipulate Simone, how she believed everything he told her, how pathetic she was. In another, Mrs. Evelyn told Derek that abandoning Simone during labor was brilliant because it would be impossible to prove intent. There were text messages where Derek and his mother discussed the fake psychiatric evaluation, where they workshopped the exact wording to make it most damaging to Simone's custody case. There were messages between Derek and Bianca where he promised her a life of luxury once Simone was out of the picture permanently. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and absolutely clear about premeditation and intent to harm. When we finally finished reviewing everything, Simone looked at Bianca and said something I didn't expect. "Thank you. I know this was hard for you, and I know you're risking a lot. I don't forgive you for your part in this, and I probably never will. But I'm grateful you're doing the right thing now." Bianca nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "I hope someday you can find peace. You and your baby deserve so much better than what Derek and I put you through." After Bianca left, Rebecca turned to us with grim satisfaction. "We've got him. Between the gas station footage, the fake medical documents, the witness testimonies, and now these recordings, Derek doesn't have a chance. I'm not just going to win the custody case. I'm going to make sure Derek goes to prison for attempted murder." The custody hearing took place on a cold morning in February, almost 8 weeks after that terrible night in the storm. The courtroom in the street, Louis Family Court Building, was packed with people. Derek sat at the defendant's table with his expensive lawyer, a man named Charles Whitmore, who had a reputation for getting abusive men off with minimal consequences. Mrs. Evelyn sat directly behind Derek, her face set in a mask of righteous indignation, as if she were the victim in all of this. On our side of the courtroom, Simone sat between Rebecca and me, holding my hand tightly. Isaiah was with a court-approved childcare worker in a room nearby, too young to understand the battle being fought over his future. Behind us sat our witnesses, Bianca, looking terrified but determined, Mr. Hassan from the gas station, several of Derek's co-workers, Dr. Morrison, whose name had been forged, and a dozen other people who'd agreed to testify about Derek's character and actions. Judge Patricia Coleman presided, a black woman in her mid-50s with a reputation for being tough but fair, someone who didn't tolerate nonsense in her courtroom. She'd reviewed all the preliminary evidence and had granted our request for this to be heard as both a custody matter and a criminal preliminary hearing, which meant Derek was facing not just loss of parental rights, but potential criminal charges. Derek's lawyer went first, trying to paint Simone as an unstable woman who'd endangered her child by giving birth outside a medical facility. He presented the fake psychiatric evaluation, not knowing we'd already proven it was fraudulent. He called Mrs. Evelyn as a character witness, and she testified that Derek was a devoted son and husband who'd been desperately trying to help his mentally ill wife. She claimed Derek had driven Simone to the hospital, but that Simone had jumped out of the car in a delusional state and run away, and Derek had spent all night searching for her. It was all lies, carefully constructed lies, but Mrs. Evelyn told them with such conviction that I could see some people in the courtroom wavering. Then it was Rebecca's turn. She methodically destroyed every piece of Derek's defense. She called Dr. Morrison to testify that he'd never met Simone and that the psychiatric evaluation was a forgery. She presented Marcus Chen's confession that Derek had paid him $3,500 to create the fake document. She showed the gas station surveillance footage of Derek calmly making phone calls while Simone was giving birth alone in the storm. She called Derek's co-workers, who testified about conversations where Derek had talked about wanting Simone to disappear and how excited he was to start a new life with Bianca. She presented bank records showing Derek had been systematically draining their joint accounts and hiding money in preparation for his life with Bianca, and then Rebecca called Bianca Rios to the stand. The courtroom went completely silent as Bianca walked to the witness box, her hands shaking as she was sworn in. Derek's face went white when he realized what was about to happen. He leaned over and whispered something urgent to his lawyer, but it was too late. Rebecca approached Bianca gently, establishing her relationship with Derek, how long the affair had lasted, how Mrs. Evelyn had been involved in facilitating it. Then Rebecca asked the critical question. "Miss Rios, did Derek contact you on the evening of the day Simone went into labor?" "Yes," Bianca said, her voice quiet but clear in the silent courtroom. "He called me around 7:15 that evening." "What did he say to you?" Bianca took a deep breath. "He was laughing. He said he'd solved all our problems. He told me he'd left Simone at a bus stop on Highway 40 while she was in active labor, and that by morning she'd probably be dead from exposure or childbirth complications." The courtroom erupted in gasps and angry murmurs. Judge Coleman banged her gavel for order. "Did you record this conversation?" Rebecca asked. "Yes, I did. I'd started recording our calls because Derek was becoming erratic, and I was scared." Rebecca entered the recording into evidence and played it for the court. Derek's voice filled the courtroom, cheerful and callous, describing in detail how he'd driven Simone to the bus stop, told her to get out, and left her there in the rain. "She actually believed I was just stopping to get gas," Derek's voice said through the speakers, followed by his laughter. "She was having contractions and still trusted me. By tomorrow morning, this will all be over, and we can start our real life together." I watched Derek's face as his own words played. He'd gone from pale to gray, his confident demeanor completely shattered. Mrs. Evelyn behind him had her hand over her mouth, finally realizing that her son's carefully constructed lies were collapsing around them. The recording continued with Bianca asking Derek, "What if Simone survived? What if someone found her? No one's going to be out there in this storm," Derek's voice responded. "And even if they do find her eventually, it'll look like she wandered off from the hospital in some kind of postpartum psychotic break. That's why we need that psychiatric evaluation ready. We're building a narrative, baby. Trust me." When the recording ended, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Coleman's face was set in stone, her eyes cold as she looked at Derek. Rebecca then played a second recording, this one between Bianca and Mrs. Evelyn. In it, Mrs. Evelyn coached Bianca on what to say if anyone questioned Derek's story, told her to stick to the script about Simone being mentally unstable, promised to protect both of them if they stayed loyal to Derek. "We're family now," Mrs. Evelyn's voice said on the recording, "and family protects each other, no matter what the truth is." Rebecca presented more evidence, each piece building an irrefutable case. Text messages between Derek and Bianca discussing their plans after Simone was gone. Bank statements showing Derek had taken out a life insurance policy on Simone just 3 months before Isaiah was born, with himself as the sole beneficiary for $250,000. Witness testimony from neighbors who'd seen Derek verbally abusing Simone, controlling who she could talk to, isolating her from friends and family. By the time Rebecca rested her case, Derek's lawyer looked defeated, knowing there was no way to overcome the mountain of evidence against his client. Judge Coleman called a brief recess, and when we returned, Her expression was severe. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, and I have to say this is one of the most disturbing cases of domestic violence and attempted murder I've encountered in 20 years on the bench." She looked directly at Derek, who couldn't meet her eyes. "Mr. Derek Carter, not only did you abandon your wife while she was in labor during a severe storm, leaving her and your newborn son to die, but you planned this abandonment in advance. You took out life insurance on your wife. You created false psychiatric documents. You enlisted your mistress and your mother in a conspiracy to cover up your crime." "Your Honor, I can explain," Derek started, but Judge Coleman cut him off. "You'll have your chance to explain to a criminal court. Based on the evidence presented here today, I'm issuing an order for your immediate arrest on charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, forgery, and fraud. Bailiff, take Mr. Carter into custody." Two bailiffs moved forward and handcuffed Derek as he protested loudly, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that the recordings were taken out of context. His lawyer tried to argue for bail, but Judge Coleman denied it, citing Derek as a flight risk and a danger to Simone and Isaiah. Then the judge turned to Mrs. Evelyn. "Mrs. Evelyn Carter, you are also being charged as an accessory to attempted murder and conspiracy. You actively participated in planning and covering up your son's crime. You will be taken into custody as well." Mrs. Evelyn's face went from smug to terrified in an instant as bailiffs approached her. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "I was just protecting my son. Any mother would do the same." "Any mother would protect their child from harm," Judge Coleman said coldly. "You helped your son try to commit murder. That's not protection. That's participation in a crime." As they led Derek and Mrs. Evelyn away in handcuffs, Derek looked back at Simone with pure hatred in his eyes. "You'll regret this," he shouted. "You and that bastard child." Simone didn't flinch. She stood tall, holding my hand, watching the man who'd tried to kill her being taken to face justice. Judge Coleman then addressed the custody matter. "As for parental rights, I am permanently and irrevocably terminating Derek Carter's parental rights to the minor child Isaiah Carter. He will have no custody, no visitation, no contact of any kind. Simone Carter is granted sole legal and physical custody. Furthermore, I am issuing a permanent restraining order prohibiting Derek Carter and Evelyn Carter from coming within 1,000 feet of Simone Carter or Isaiah Carter for the rest of their lives." The courtroom erupted in applause, which Judge Coleman allowed for a moment before gaveling for order. Simone collapsed into my arms, sobbing with relief, all the tension and fear of the past 2 months finally releasing. "It's over, Mama," she whispered. "It's finally over." "Yes, baby," I said, holding her tight, my own tears flowing freely. "You're safe now. Isaiah is safe. And Derek is never going to hurt you again." The criminal trial took place 4 months later. Derek's expensive lawyer tried every trick in the book, attempting to suppress evidence, discredit witnesses, paint Derek as a man who'd made a mistake in a moment of panic rather than someone who'd planned and executed an attempted murder. But the evidence was too strong, the recordings too damning, the pattern too clear. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy, forgery of medical documents, fraud, and domestic violence. Derek was sentenced to 10 years in prison without possibility of parole. Mrs. Evelyn, as an accessory, received 5 years. Both would have to register as violent offenders upon release, would be prohibited from ever contacting Simone or Isaiah, and would lose all parental and grandparental rights permanently. As they led Derek away after sentencing, he looked at Simone one final time. There was no hatred in his eyes anymore, just the empty gaze of a man who destroyed his own life through cruelty and arrogance. Mrs. Evelyn wept as they took her away, finally understanding that her blind loyalty to her son had cost her everything. 6 weeks after the trial ended, Simone and I were sitting in my small kitchen on a sunny spring morning. Isaiah, now 6 months old, was in his high chair, grabbing at the mashed bananas Simone was feeding him. He was a beautiful, healthy baby who smiled constantly and showed no lasting effects from his traumatic entry into the world. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating my grandson's face, and I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. "Mama," Simone said, looking at me with clear, strong eyes, so different from the broken, terrified eyes I'd seen in that bus shelter, "I want to do something to help other women like me. Women who are being abused but don't know how to escape, who think they're trapped because they have children or no money or nowhere to go." I nodded, feeling warmth spread through my chest. "What are you thinking?" "I want to start a foundation," she said. "The Isaiah Foundation. To provide legal help, safe housing, counseling, and financial support for women escaping domestic violence. I want to use my story to show other women that they can survive, that they can fight back, that they don't have to accept abuse as their fate." Over the next months, we worked to make that dream a reality. Rebecca helped us navigate the legal requirements for setting up a nonprofit. Valentina volunteered to provide investigative services for women who needed to gather evidence against their abusers. Bianca, seeking redemption for her role in Simone's suffering, donated a significant amount of money to get the foundation started and volunteered to counsel other women about the warning signs of manipulative men. The Isaiah Foundation officially opened its doors 1 year after that terrible night in the storm. Our first client was a young woman named Angela, whose husband had been controlling her finances and isolating her from family, the same pattern Derek had used with Simone. We helped Angela document the abuse, provided her with legal representation, and got her and her 2 children into safe housing. Watching Simone counsel Angela, seeing my daughter use her pain to help someone else escape a similar situation, filled me with more pride than I could express. Today, 3 years after I found Simone and Isaiah at that bus stop, the foundation has helped over 200 women escape abusive relationships. We've expanded to provide job training, childcare support, and transitional housing. Simone speaks at schools and community centers, warning young women about the signs of abusive relationships, teaching them that love should never hurt, that control is not care, that they deserve respect and safety. Isaiah is now 3 years old, a bright, joyful child who loves books and building blocks and asking endless questions about everything. He has no memory of Derek, knows nothing of the man who tried to kill him before he'd even taken his first breath. As far as Isaiah is concerned, his family is Mama Simone and Grandma Ernestine, and that's all he needs. Simone has started dating again, carefully and cautiously, but she's learned to recognize red flags, learned to trust her instincts, learned that she deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. I'm a mother who drove through a storm to save her daughter's life, a grandmother who won't let anyone hurt my family, and an advocate for women who deserve better than the hand they've been dealt. If my story teaches anyone anything, I hope it's this. Listen when someone tells you they're being hurt. Believe them. Act immediately. Don't wait until it's too late. And to the women who are suffering in silence right now, who think they have no way out, who believe the lies their abusers tell them about being worthless or crazy or deserving of mistreatment, I want you to know this. You are stronger than you think. You deserve so much better. And there are people who will fight for you if you'll just reach out and ask for help. Your story doesn't have to end in tragedy. It can end in triumph, in freedom, in a new life built on your own terms. Be brave. Be strong. Survive. That is Ernestine Carter's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these powerful stories about mothers who save their daughters, about survival against impossible odds, and about justice for victims of domestic violence. Real question. If you were Ernestine, what would you have done when you got that phone call in the middle of the storm? Would you have gone out searching immediately like she did? Would you have called the police first? Or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something. Share it if you know someone who's in an abusive relationship, someone who needs to know that there is a way out. Someone who needs to understand that love should never hurt, that control is not care, and that they deserve so much better. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about grandmothers who fight for their families, daughters who find the strength to escape their abusers, men who show their true evil when no one is watching, and what happens when courage and evidence come together to deliver justice. This story is about more than just one woman's escape from an abusive marriage. It's about recognizing the warning signs before it's too late. It's about understanding that domestic violence doesn't always look like bruises and black eyes. Sometimes it looks like control, like isolation, like financial manipulation, like a partner who makes you feel worthless, who cuts you off from family and friends, who makes you doubt your own reality. Thanks for watching. Remember, domestic violence is one of the most underreported crimes in America. Every day, women are being abused by partners who seem charming and successful to the outside world. Every day, someone is planning their escape, but doesn't know where to start or who to trust. Your life matters. Your children's lives matter. And you deserve a future free from fear. See you in the next video.